From hidden Mediterranean gems to the wilderness of Antarctica, Silversea invites you to explore the world in greater depth. Venture to over 900 destinations across all 7 continents. On board small ships that set the standard for elite ocean travel, every journey opens doors to extraordinary discoveries. And wherever you sail, you can expect the same Silversea promise: unrivaled service, unmatched comfort, and unforgettable memories. Visit silversea.com to learn more.
The president is depressed right now. His war's a mess, his approval ratings in the toilet, so he assembled Team Circle Jerk for an emergency tongue bath. According to an analysis done by the New York Times this week, 1 out of every 6 sentences in a Trump cabinet meeting either flattered the president, gave him credit for something, or criticized his opponents. 1 out of 6. Say what you want about Bill Clinton, at least when his staff him, he didn't make us watch.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the ice pop to our midweek banana split. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm Naomi.
And I'm Alex. How are you, Naomi?
I'm good. How are you?
I love it when we two meet on a Sunday. What have you been up to?
Well, I've got a dog with me right now who loves to
Wrigley
help record a
there?
podcast. So Wrigley is studiously ignoring me at the moment because I'm not playing ball with him, and that's the only thing he really cares about. How about you? Have you found anything funny?
Yeah, I was reading a story about the sports goods firm, I think they are. I think that's what they do. They do outdoor sort of tracksuits and things like that. They're called Patagonia.
Oh, yeah, I know them, yeah.
They're suing a drag queen.
Go on.
Called Patagonia.
Patagonia?
Yeah.
For what, copyright?
Yeah, for copyright. Now, this drag queen apparently has raised millions for good causes by doing various runs and fundraising events, etc. So in Los Angeles. So it's turning into a bit of a thing.
And look, there must be drag queens called like Coca-Cola.
Yeah, there must be.
Lulu Lemonade is crying out to be a drag queen.
Isn't it? I've always been quite fond of Virginia Ham, which is the name of the drag queen in Torch Song Trilogy.
I would have thought you'd have gone for Fiscal Drag.
No, I think I said that was Jeremy Hunt's drag name way back when, if you remember. Virginia Ham goes through some of the ones that she rejected before she landed on Virginia Ham, and they include Anita Man, Fonda Boys, and Bang Bangladesh.
Well, they are funnier than quantitative teasing.
I love that.
I thought, because obviously I'd have to be a drag king. So True. I was going to go for Pro Rogue.
Oh, Pro Rogue. I like it. I do. I like it. But isn't it weird? Because Patagonia is like an actual geographic area.
Yeah. Are they suing Chile? Or is Chile going to sue them?
I don't understand how you can sue over something that...
In Pride Month as well. Because I think, didn't you say that the case is being heard in June?
Yeah, that's right. And actually, the drag queen has made that point during Pride Month while she's raising money for various environmental causes. It just seems like quite poor form. It feels to me like this is something they're going to turn away from very, very quickly, doesn't it, to you?
Which they bloody should.
Right. As it's Sunday and, for many, payday, allow us to send the collection tray around. We make every minute of our podcast available to everyone for free and at the same time. If you think that that is the right philosophy, help us to keep doing that by becoming a subscriber on ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod for as little as $5 a month.
And we say thank you by holding regular live online Q&As, giving you access to our very lively Discord space, and involving you in the editorial process. And the next quarterly online editorial meeting that is open to all monthly supporters is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So now really is a splendid time to subscribe if you've been thinking about doing it and now need a little bit of motivation to finally do it.
Here, right. So what do you think is worth our time and enormous intellects, seeing as we've done drag names, which are the really important issue of the day? I would suggest we should do the Alan Milburn report on youth unemployment. I think that's a shoe-in, even though it's an issue that we discuss on this podcast very, very regularly.
Yeah.
But it's good to have a sort of concrete basis for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as is our custom, let's broaden things out beyond the domestic for another topic, because unless I am very much mistaken, it seems we are seeing the tender green shoots of a Euro-NATO emerging, for lack of a better term. So I'd like to get into the detail on that a bit.
Maybe that is something we should find a name for.
Yeah.
And for a lighter final third, but no less useful, I think, as a dweller of a hot country and you a lover of hot weather, I think we should share our best life hacks for coping with the heat.
Sounds like a big old Greek salad bowl of goodness to me, Alex. Let's tuck in.
Quiet, Riot.
Well, you wait years for a sweeping New Labour era diagnosis of what's gone wrong with Britain, and then two come along in 48 hours. Hot on the heels of Tony Blair's more than 5,000-word essay on Tuesday night, warning Keir Starmer that Labour is, quote, playing with fire over the future of the country, which, as listeners of Thursday's main show will remember, we had quite a lot of fun with. Thursday brought us Alan Milburn's interim report on youth unemployment. Two New Labour grandees, two big swings at the architecture of the British state, two reminders that the old guard are very much doing a comeback tour. You can almost hear the policy papers from 2003 being dusted off in Millbank Tower.
The difference being, of course, that Milburn was asked for his opinion.
This is true. The substance, though, is sobering. Nearly 1 million young people aged 16 to 24 are now NEET, so not in education, employment or training, a figure Milburn warns could climb to 1.25 million over the next 5 years. He put the annual cost to the country at £125 billion, which is more than we spend on education. But the texture of it is what really lands. 6 in 10 young NEETs today have never had a job, and that's up from 4 in 10 in 2005. Nearly half cite a work-limiting health condition, and within that group, the share whose primary condition is mental health has almost doubled to 43%. Milburn's diagnosis is that this is not a soft generation. Let's have a listen.
There comes a moment in time when a problem just can't be ignored, where it's too big, where the impact is too great, not just on the country, but on the young people themselves. This is the moment. Fewer entry-level jobs, a declining number of apprenticeships for young people, the Saturday job disappearing, opportunities being fewer. So now young people are in this awful catch-22 situation where they're being asked for work experience, but they haven't had the opportunity to get it. It's impossible for them. No wonder that they often feel like giving up. Thank heavens they aren't. 84% of them in our survey want to work. So you've got to understand what is going on in their lives, you've got to understand what's going on in the labour market, and you've got to understand what's going on in the system that is supposedly taking young people from the world of education into the world of employment, but is failing to do so. When you have 6 in 10 of these young people who've never worked, it was 4 in 10 20 years ago, this is becoming a generational crisis, and it means that all of the opportunities that we had as youngsters, all of those opportunities are just not around today. Every parent, every grandparent is worried about the future of their kids. That sort of great British promise, which is each generation would do better than the last, that's a promise that is now being broken.
It is, in his words, a whole system failure, a labour market that has kicked away its bottom rungs, an education system measured on attainment rather than transitions, and an NHS configured for treatment, not participation, a welfare state that pays young people for what they cannot do rather than investing in what they could become. Britain, he concludes, has institutions for young people, but no participation system. Alex, Milburn's grand framing is a bit of a shift from the old welfare state to new working state, as he puts it. And when read alongside Blair's intervention earlier in the week on the unsustainability of the welfare bill and triple lock, do you think we're seeing the start of a coordinated pincer movement on Starmer to go further on welfare cuts? And would that actually help the children in this report, or the young people in this report? And, how would they even get it through, given that Labour already lost once in this parliament the argument around cutting the welfare bill? The backbenchers rebelled on it. How much of this is a launch from the right, trying to wrestle policy control in their direction?
I have to say, I did not see the Milburn report that cynically. I actually did read most of it, not the appendices and things like that, but I read the meat and potatoes of the report. And I thought it was quite a serious piece of work that looked at some systemic problems. And I didn't get a sense from it that it was making suggestions that would save money. It was doing quite the opposite. It was laying out quite a lot of stuff that will end up costing a whole pile of money, but it's quite necessary. To a certain extent, I think there was a generational lens showing. Did you get that feeling? Because I know you've looked at it. Did you get the feeling that it was someone of an older generation talking about the youth of today? A little bit, not in a judgmental way, but it did seem to be a tourist in this land making their observations.
Well, of course. And, I sort of do think that there are more modern thinkers that aren't being used for a lot of this work. And I do find it a bit depressing that we keep going back to the same old people. Many of the people who were, in government, in ministerial positions that created the foundations for many of the problems that the country has got now. So, just the who of it, I think, probably skewed me towards thinking, oh, God, what's he got to say about this?
That's interesting. It did the opposite for me, you see. I thought my first reaction was that this is obviously something that will contain quite a lot of criticism about what's been done or what hasn't been done for several decades. And so actually it made it more credible to put someone at the head of it that was saying, we fucked up.
Yeah, no, and fair. And he didn't shy away from some of the responsibility that has lain with Labour governments of old. Did you have a feel from reading it that he was sort of giving the demand side problem and the supply side problem equal weight? Personally, from an employer perspective, I think that the supply side issue is underpriced in all of this.
Do you want to explain a little bit for listeners what you mean about when you've gone out to recruit, what have you found?
Well, first of all, do you even go out to recruit when national insurance contributions have been hiked for lower paid roles? Or do you try and distribute that work amongst your existing workforce? Do you go for somebody who's got more experience because, it's not really costing you anything? And then there is the sort of lack of very, very basic skills that a lot of young people suffer from. Basic writing skills, and trying to test those in an environment like an interview process where you've got to be very fair, you've got to give everybody equal chance at doing it. You're obviously going to make reasonable adjustment for people that have got a genuine need for that, more time to write something in a scenario based setting that you're giving them on the day. And I have noticed over the course of the last decade a decline in the quality of applicant who is able to problem solve quite quickly and understand the very basic tools that exist in order to complete a task. And I often talk about, I think, the housing crisis being as much a part of this as anything, because it ends up infantilizing people even into their late 20s and early 30s. They haven't been able to move out of their parents' house. So they haven't had to pay bills. They haven't had to, stay on the line, trying to call a utility company, get through to the right person, explain the problem, not get fobbed off with a crappy answer, etc. That kind of resilience.
They are in some ways not fully cooked.
Exactly that. And so I think he is right that it is a whole system failure, but I'd actually make it even further than the systems he's pointed to around skills and education and employment and training providers and FE and HE and all of that. It's the housing crisis as much as anything that kids are not, they're being infantilized by it.
You see, to me, the thing that is happening is slightly more complicated. Those elements, I think, would always be present hiring someone for like their first job out of uni, or, someone who is quite young and quite inexperienced. But what you got in exchange was a kind of energy that really only very young people have, a willingness to learn. Younger people, I find, this may not be your experience, but I find them easier to manage. Older employees are more set in their ways. But the biggest thing, I think, is that there's two things, actually. The first thing is that it feels to me like medium-sized organizations are squeezed. You get these super companies, and then you get a lot of very small employers. A very small employer doesn't really have the capacity to be training 2 or 3 new people at any given time, and so they tend to go for more experienced employees. A very large employer, younger graduate employees tend to get swallowed up. So I think there is something systemic missing in that medium-sized business, medium-sized organization. There's a lot less of it in the mix than there used to be, or so it feels to me. The second thing is, and it's interesting that the report mentions it several times, and there were loads of parents actually calling into various programs, giving their experience of why their kids are finding it impossible to get into the jobs market. And the thing that was mentioned more than anything else was COVID. It feels to me like there are so many areas, health being a major one of them, but also education, employment, where COVID was a much bigger disruption than really we have reckoned with as a country. There were so many parents calling in and saying, my kid was doing well, and then COVID happened, and suddenly they couldn't get a placement upon finishing university. And when COVID had passed, those placements went to people who were just graduating that year.
And then so many of those jobs have gone. And I adore young people. I always have. I mentor so many young people that don't work for me. I never, ever don't reply to a young person that writes in and asks for my advice and my time and my help. I will always try and do that. And then I, when they thank me, I say, don't just pay it forward. You help young people when you're old. Please do that. I do think that, for that generation who had their education disrupted by COVID, again, if you didn't go to uni or your uni experience was being shut in your room for the entire time, again, you haven't had those life skills being built on. But I mean, we will get hundreds of applications for any junior job. I mean, hundreds and hundreds. And that's what I heard these parents saying, and the young people themselves, whether they were people with, a master's degree or somebody leaving high school after GCSE, that they're firing out hundreds, sometimes many hundreds of applications and not even getting replies from people.
Which must be just soul destroying, right? For their confidence.
Completely. And then that, if you have any underlying mental health condition anyway, that's only going to exacerbate it. And there was this really striking shift in the data that he mentions in the report, the rise of health-related inactivity, especially neurodevelopmental conditions and mental health. And so I guess he's asking the question about how much of that is a genuine epidemiological change post-pandemic versus a system that treats diagnosis as a one-way ticket out of the labour market rather than a starting point for supported work.
It just seems to me that there's loads of stuff going on at the moment on the welfare front, on the mental health front, on the jobs front, where it's quite obvious that the pandemic had a huge impact. And yet, how often do we talk about the pandemic? I don't think we have had a psychological reckoning as a nation with what happened during that year and a half. I really don't. I really don't think we have come to understand and accept how much more risk averse it has made businesses in terms of investing, in terms of opening up. I'm sure I can't be the only person that sees news of a sort of Ebola outbreak in Africa now and goes, uh-oh, here we go again.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there is quite a national PTSD that we are just trying to kind of sweep under the carpet. And until we have that conversation quite fully, we're just treating the symptoms, really.
But I also think that, threats to slash the welfare bill for young people or take their minimum wage requirement back down is almost certainly not the answer. I mean, I was looking at apprenticeship stats earlier because I'm a big fan of apprenticeships. I am mega annoyed that the UK has never really grappled with how to do apprenticeships properly. And in 2024-25, there were just over 350,000 apprenticeship starts in England, which meant that there were about 750,000 people participating. And that sounds like quite good numbers, right? And they're up on the previous year, but it is masking a structural problem because over half of all of the starts, nearly 52%, were for apprentices aged 25 and over, whereas the ones for the under 19s dropped to 20%, down from 23%. And a lot of them were at master's level. The growth was coming largely as a rush to beat a January 2026 deadline, after which government funding for level 7 would get restricted to younger learners. So employers kind of gamed the system. I don't think of apprenticeships as being for people with a master's degree over the age of 25. I think about them as an alternative route into employment, or for people mid-career wanting to completely switch industry and try out something new. Maybe they did a job and now want to go and be a plumber, and an apprenticeship is the way to do that. And if they've already got a little bit of savings in the bank, they can take a year to do that or whatever. So, and I'd love to be able to take on an apprentice, but the barriers to entry for it as a small employer are so extremely high that it's not something I've been able to do.
Quiet Riot. I just got up there and I was just like, oh my God, thank you.
And then I heard, someone, anyone, please help.
So he's like Superman being able to carry me off the mountain.
The award-winning Tell Me What Happened podcast from OnStar is back. New emergencies, new heroes. Find out what happens in season 6 of Tell Me What Happened. Out now.
Quiet Riot.
Shall we have a little listen to Torsten Bell? Torsten Bell is a junior minister in the government, but he's an economist by trade. And he was actually a special advisor to Alistair Darling during the global financial crisis. That was sort of his first job out of Fiji. And he made some points that I found quite interesting. Let's have a little listen.
This is about the country as a whole, and there's economic consequences for that, but there's also moral and societal consequences. Right. So we have got to make a difference. That is what we are. That's what we're doing.
When it comes to making the difference, Alan Milburn says in the report, the cost and regulatory burden of employing the young has risen sharply since 2019. Are you going to address that now? In other words, to U-turn on some of the things that you as a government have done to put further pressure on employers?
Well, what Alan said, Justin, is that this is a problem that's been building for 2 decades, not a couple of years. This is rooted in our education system, in our welfare system, in our labour market, in our health service.
But we regularly. Well, hang on a second. We regularly. I take your point about the wider process.
Justin, let me answer your question.
But answer on the things that your government has done.
I'm absolutely going to do that. I'm going to do that after I reminded you that this is a process.
Okay. Well, you've done it.
No. Well, I'm going to give you a good, concrete way of thinking about that, because before I was an MP, I was running an organisation called the Resolution Foundation, carrying out economic research. And in January 2020, just before the pandemic struck, we published a report setting out that something very unusual was happening, which is that we were seeing far too many teenagers not working, that we'd seen a halving in the number of teenagers working over the previous 20 years. We were seeing a 52% rise in the numbers that had never had a job. We highlighted that problem then because we were worried about the collapse in Saturday work and the collapse in entry-level
And you made it worse.
Jobs. Well, no, actually, that's not right, Justin.
That's most what of the employers tell us.
Yeah, well, you've asked those questions. Let me come on directly to the two issues that are generally raised on national insurance and on the youth minimum wage. So on the national insurance, just remember this: those who are aged under 21 pay no national insurance at all. No national insurance at all. If you're an apprentice and you're aged 25 and under, there's no national insurance on that.
This is for an employer.
For an employer. There's none at all. That's for exactly the reason you are highlighting. I think it's important. I've not heard those facts mentioned once on the many times I've listened to the Today programme. So it's important to understand the facts. It's also important to understand that the employment rates of those who are aged 18 to 25, so the group that might be paying some national insurance amongst young people, are exactly the same today as they were when we took office in July 2024.
So it's not having an impact. You are saying this morning, are you, that those changes with employers' national insurance have not had an impact on youth employment?
No, I wouldn't say that it's not having an impact on employers. I listen to employers every week, both nationally and locally, and I know that the increase in taxation has had an effect on them. I'm just saying that this is the challenge we face as a country. The real challenge we've just heard about from Wendy and Lizzie is one that has been long building. It's not about policy changes in the last 2 years.
What Torsten Bell was saying was that all this stuff is being put down to relatively generically, the minimum wage going up or the national insurance contributions going up. But a lot of that doesn't apply to big chunks of those demographics that appear to be most severely affected. For instance, apprenticeships from 18 to 24, that increase in national insurance contributions doesn't apply. So you would expect to see those have an uptick instead of those have a downturn. So there's other stuff going on in the market. It can't all be explained basically in the fairly general way that is being attempted.
No, but business confidence is down. It is incredibly difficult to do long-term strategic planning for businesses in the UK at the moment. You don't know the terms on which you're going to be operating. energy costs being an absolutely critical factor for many of them, the impact of AI, the regulatory requirements. Are we going to align ever further with the EU, or are we sucking up to the USA? We're signing trade deals with different countries that will require different conformity around certain environmental standards, animal welfare protection, etc., etc. And so long-term investment decisions are just not being made in the UK at the moment. There is so much flux going on. And so in those moments, you control what you can control. And so lots of businesses go, okay, well, we are going to do a recruitment freeze. If people leave, we are not going to replace them, or we are going to, axe an entire department, or we're going to take 10% off every department headcount. With all of those pressures are a very rational reaction to an incredibly unstable operating environment.
Yeah. But then again, if you turn around and give policy confidence, so if you say this is the long-term plan, these are the principles, this is the way we're headed with EU, if you addressed all of those things, the problem is that underneath that, you have a political instability that does not guarantee any longer that someone elected with a big majority will last 5 years. And so you can't even trust the policy when it is forward thinking and long term. So how do we address that, the underneath bit? Because that seems to me even more fundamental to businesses and people in general feeling a lack of confidence in what's going on in the future. And how do you increase confidence in the future when you have a sort of erratic baboon across the Atlantic just causing absolute mayhem around the world?
And this is partly why actually there have been quite a few industry people getting involved in the campaign for proportional representation, because they are now seeing that as a route to something a little bit more stable on the political front that might smooth out the wild oscillations between governments of different tribes having very, very different approaches to regulation that affects business or energy markets, etc. So you're dead right. The whole operating environment is, and within that, the political system is volatile, uncertain, and very, very difficult to plan for and budget for.
And also, I think there is a softer, more human reputational side where employers must be beginning to think that this generation is a bit too soft, and even young people must be beginning to think, is the problem with me? That creates again more instability and more lack of confidence.
And a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So maybe the first thing is to stop saying that there's a problem with this generation. There's a problem with what happened. This generation suffered a significant trauma. And I go back to saying I don't think we have fully reckoned with what happened. And we sort of need to pull together, I think, because at the moment it feels like we are pulling apart. There are segments pulling away from each other to say, well, I'm doing my bit, you're not doing your bit.
Any solution to the meta crises that face our country will have to be decided on intergenerationally. And I think this is a story as old as time, that decisions are made on behalf of young people without including them. And smart politicians will begin to change that and bring far more young people's consideration and voice into the decision-making process.
And maybe it starts with education, Naomi, because I remember thinking in the very early years of the coalition that I didn't like what was going on with education. There was a kind of commodification of education, that instead of saying go to university because you will learn how to research stuff, you will learn how to problem solve, you will learn how to present a bit of work.
You'll learn how to take constructive feedback about your work.
All of that. I remember that we entered an era where it was business driven. And the idea was that business was going to tell us that in 5 years, we're going to need 20,000 more accountants. And all of that relied on complete predictability in the market, right? And then comes Trump, Brexit, COVID, Ukraine, Trump again, the Iran war. And it's like, now that you have pushed universities to target basically graduates at particular industries because you think those positions will be there, and those positions are not there, have you created actually educated people that could transfer their skills to something else?
Right. I mean, it was not even, I don't think, 3 years ago that Sunak had all those posters of like a ballerina and, oh, she doesn't know her next job will be in cyber. Well, guess what, boyo? Those jobs are gone. It's incredible how incorrectly, I mean, if you do computer science, you'll never be out of work. Well, there are computer science graduates up and down the country who are being told, oh, no, all of that work's now being automated. I mean, even retail. I don't know if you've been to some stores where you don't even have to scan your product. You just dump all of it into the basin and the thing knows exactly which products you're trying to purchase and says, does this look right? And you go, yeah, pay, and out you go. I mean, the jobs that have gone have not been replaced. And there is going to be, at best, a really significant time lag.
And the other thing is that any solution will have to be based on data. And I know that there is something you particularly picked up on, Naomi. There is a finding in there that there are over 300,000 people, 18 to 24, that are not in work, education, they're not on benefits. They basically don't appear in any of the statistics.
Yep.
And there's nobody, no ministry, no institution responsible for finding those people.
Yep.
So how are we going to make those decisions when we don't even know what's going on?
I agree. What it tells you is that British statecraft still runs on the assumption that if someone isn't transacting with an institution, like by claiming a benefit, enrolling on a course, filling in a tax return, then they just don't really exist as a policy problem. And these are young people who have simply fallen out of every system simultaneously. And because no single institution, quote unquote, owns them, then no one goes looking. Now, look, the libertarian objection to data sharing and case management infrastructure is real. But the counter argument is that the alternative isn't privacy, it's invisibility.
Exactly right.
For which, a depressed 21-year-old isn't a freedom, that's abandonment.
Quite. Another problem that would be solved by identity cards.
Yeah.
Quiet, Riot. Quiet, Riot.
On Wednesday, Keir Starmer welcomed Donald Tusk to a Second World War era bunker on a former military base in northwest London. I mean, the staging here was not, shall we say, subtle. The two countries signed a new far-reaching bilateral defence and security treaty.
Well, Prime Minister, my friend, it is really a privilege to sign such a historic document between our two countries here. And what a place to do it, with so much history here between our two countries. We have a long history together, shared values together, fought together, and that is reinforced as we face the challenges of today. And there's no greater challenge for either of our countries than the challenge of Russian aggression. And we see that not just in Ukraine itself, but beyond Ukraine, impacting on our own countries. So that's the context in which we sign what is actually a generational uplift in the relationship on security and defence between our two countries. That means we build on what we've already got. We have deployed troops, NATO troops, obviously. We will now train further together. We will share capacity together, develop complex weaponry together, and invest in each other in terms of how we go forward. So this is really important in terms of a signal to the world of the strength of the relationship between our two countries.
Tusk has spent the last year warning that Europe should be ready for major conflict with Russia by 2027. That'll be next year. The rhetoric proved sadly prophetic. In the early hours of Friday morning, a Russian drone hit a Romanian apartment block and exploded, injuring civilians in a NATO member. Reaction has been furious. This comes after a flurry of activity on NATO's eastern flank. The most dangerous moment, Baltic leaders argue, is the morning after a Ukraine ceasefire, when Russia's war economy and battle-hardened army can pivot quickly from south to west. The complication looming over all of this, Washington, they've told NATO allies in Brussels that it intends to significantly cut its contribution of combat units to the alliance. So, Naomi, shall we start from the agreement with Poland and focus outwards? Yeah. So what's in this agreement, just in really, really broad terms?
So it was signed at RAF Northolt this week with a wreath laying at the Battle of Britain bunker, thrown in for full historical resonance. And it's a treaty that covers border security, organised crime, defense content, which was the main headline on it, and it explicitly names Russia as a long-term strategic threat to both NATO and the two nations.
Mm-hmm.
And the substantive military content includes the UK and Poland co-producing the next generation of medium-range air defense missiles, stepping up use of uncrewed systems to reinforce that eastern flank of NATO, and large-scale joint exercises. It carries a signal about broader UK-EU relations. Both describe it as part of a deepening of the cooperation with the EU at large. And that's interesting because it makes Poland one of the main conduits for Starmer's quiet rapprochement with Brussels. And remember, this one, the Northolt Agreement, if that's what you want to call it, sits alongside the Trinity House Agreement that the UK has with Germany and the refreshed Lancaster House framework that the UK has with France. So it's now like a third leg of a bilateral defence architecture that we've been building with our neighbours.
So it is a positive signal to Europe, but it is also kind of a sidelining of Europe. Not a sidelining, but it's also saying you're moving too slowly for the taste of several member states, and we're going to do bilateral stuff.
And you're moving too slowly to address the threat from Moscow. I mean, we had GCHQ this week saying that our critical infrastructure, so like deep sea cables that connect us to the internet and to, the whole world, are constantly being attacked by Russia. And then, of course, all the well-known cyber attacks and outages you get on companies' websites and supply chains and things like that. So, it's happening right now. And Europe are in aggregate not being quick enough and serious enough in defending us.
Yeah. And then there's been, again, not by coincidence, I'm sure, just so much activity along the East European border of NATO. What are the sort of headlines there?
Well, this is it. I mean, the tempo has been rising in ways that don't often make the front pages. NATO launched Eastern Sentry, SENTRY, in September 2025. And that was like a standing multi-domain vigilance activity along the entire flank. You've got Germany's Lithuania Brigade that was inaugurated in May last year. They're scaling towards 5,000 troops and full operational capability by next year. Canada is deploying troops to Latvia. There's a maritime operation protecting undersea infrastructure in direct response to the pattern of cable and pipeline sabotage in the Baltic that has been running for more than 2 years now. And all of it collectively signifies, I think, that NATO is quietly shifted from a tripwire model, like where forward presence was the symbol of commitment, towards something closer to genuine forward defense. Because the theory is that by the time you need to reinforce, it's already too late.
Yeah, and very much almost like a European sub-NATO, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, exactly that.
Because at the same time, you're seeing threats of America withdrawing troops from Germany. And I was listening to a security expert the other day saying that the more we increase activity on the eastern border, the more America have the opportunity to say, well, you don't need us.
Yeah.
You're doing it on your own now. So good for you. And so it's kind of a self-fulfilling thing, but certainly it feels to me more rational to be doing it as if we are on our own than to be counting on someone that we know is a toss-up, whether they come to our aid or not.
Starmer's language about Russian aggression was interesting. What did you make of it?
Well, I mean, I think it's right. Russia effectively had two ways to respond to its Ukraine cock-up, because it was a cock-up. It was just a catastrophic miscalculation to think that they could do this thing and have it done and dusted in a few days.
And the Russian death toll is horrific.
And they're now in a situation where, they've lost tens of thousands of troops. The cost in financial terms is huge. Their economy is on its knees. People are actually quite unhappy with Putin, even by Putin-esque oppressive standards. And so it was a miscalculation in any way you care to think about it. And there were two ways to respond to that. One was effectively to get rid of Putin quickly and establish a new foreign policy for Russia. The other way is to double down and say, well, we've started now. We're in a war with everyone now, so we might as well be in a war with everyone now. And it seems to me that Russia is definitely pivoting towards the latter.
Yeah.
Especially when it feels it has at best an indifferent White House over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of language shift is quite interesting. It's very subtle, but he has called it the greatest challenge facing Britain. And why do I think that is notable? Well, it's just not very British in our political culture. Like historically, we've been quite resistant of that framing. Quite a long tradition of finding ways to describe these things as primarily a European concern. And I think now the difference is the language is backed by resource commitment, this bilateral treaty architecture that I talked about earlier, and a government willing to spend political capital on defence in a way that annoyed some of its own MPs, cutting foreign aid in order to help fund it, etc. I guess whether it constitutes an acceptance of a long-term war footing rather than a crisis moment all depends what happens to the trajectory of that defence budget. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that more because John Healey's obviously got his big defence plan coming.
Do you think there's a political dimension at all to it, given how poor Badenoch has been on foreign policy stuff? It's the area where she's made notable mistakes and then had to U-turn. And also, and also how how much of an albatross Farage's former Russophile attitude is hanging around his neck. So do you think there's a kind of dual purpose there?
I think it is not the main driver.
Of course not.
I saw Starmer on TV last night and I was like, for the first time, I think you look old. I'd always thought he'd look quite good for his age. Everyone is usually surprised to know that he's 63. And I do think that being privy to matters of national security has a very rapid aging impact on people. And then, of course, he's dealing with all of the internal Labour warfare as well. So it's certainly a useful problem to have from a political perspective, because you're right. The Conservative Party and Reform UK are not where the public are on all of this, and they are deeply concerned about it all, and they definitely didn't want to go to war with Iran, and they are extremely anti-Trump even within the Reform bloc. So I think it's convenient for Labour, but I think I'm primarily being driven by a genuine knowledge of just how under attack we are.
Of course, but it's a bonus that it's also a good wound to press, as it were.
Now, of course, we are in the western edge of Europe. The Baltic states are not. They have a long history of being told they were being paranoid about Russian aggression, and an equally long history of turning out to be completely right, to be worried about it. Have we now overreacted, do you think?
I don't think so. I think the threat is real. I think treating it seriously is the right thing to do. Those Baltic states have a history, as you said, not just of being paranoid about Russia and being right, but also of being occupied by Russia. I don't know that those ambitions are not there in the current Kremlin. I think they very much are. But looking at it, it seems to me, even this incursion in Romania, these things don't happen by accident. As NATO is accelerating its activity along that border, a drone did not fly into Romania into a block of flats by accident. That's what Russia always does. That is its war tradition. It tests the boundaries to see whether you react to it or not. And if you don't react to it, then it takes a slightly bigger risk. So I think overreaction is the sensible thing to be doing. It's only through overreaction that the Kremlin might say, oops, okay, so that's a red line. Let's back away from that. Otherwise, you're just saying, okay, well, poke us a bit more. And that's not a strategy that can work with Putin in the Kremlin and Trump in the White House.
I agree completely. And also, I think that there is maybe something in the bringing together this subject with the Milburn report we've just been talking about, and that's on expenditure. So Poland spending 4.8% GDP, Britain 2.5%, even though we've just signed this deal with them. And, our army has 3 times as many horses as it does tanks. And actually, we need to have millions more in drone technology because that is now modern warfare. We're going to have lots of questions about how we stockpile that kind of ammunition and have equipment readiness when a government that has committed on a pathway to 3% relies very heavily now on where we're going to find that money from. You cannot credibly commit to Article 5 on the Baltic flank, sustain the Ukrainian support mission, and maintain a global naval posture on that base without paying for it. And I guess the connection to the Milburn report isn't just rhetorical. A country where 1 million young people are outside of work, education and training is also a country with a shrunken military recruitment pool, underfunded health system, welfare bill, eating the fiscal space that defence investment requires. And they are the same problem about what the British state actually has the capacity to do. And basically, we desperately need growth in order to fix all of these things and pay for everything that we need to do. And that is going to require the UK joining the single market. There is no other route to that cash coming in.
Quiet, riot. Quiet, riot.
People are weather. Oh, it's too warm for me. Oh, it's warm. I like it warm, but I don't like it this warm. It's too warm. You know, there's warm and there's warm. Oh, I'm sweating cobs. What? What are cobs? I'm wringing, I'm wet through, look at me. Oh, it's sticky weather. It's sticky. Clammy. I can't get my breath. Good! It's called summer. Have a saloon and shut the Campbell, yeah?
It has been hot. Properly. Sweat through your t-shirt. Sleep on top of the duvet. Why on earth did I move to a flat with a south-facing window? Kinda hot. The Met Office is forecasting another scorcher this coming week. The London Underground is doing its annual impersonation of a fan oven, and across the country, people are once again rediscovering that British buildings were optimised for precisely one weather condition, and it isn't this one. So before we wrap up, Alex,
which one is it, though, do you think? Because I don't think they're particularly optimised for even one.
Well, keeping the heat in, not out.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Alex, a public service segment, if I can put it that way. Let's swap our tips, tricks, hacks, and most importantly, our favourite cooling drink for surviving a UK heatwave with our dignity more or less intact. I'm talking frozen flannels, blackout blinds, the great fan versus no fan debate, whether a frozen Negroni technically counts as hydration. And which supermarket has the best lemon sorbet? Bring your own grievances about air conditioning. Okay, I want to know your daytime ritual and then your nighttime ritual.
Right, let me think. So the answer to your questions is yes. Why is there even a fan debate? No, and a Negroni does not count as hydration. Right. There are certain things that are seem counterintuitive, I think, to a British person. The main one is that people think that if there is a bit of a through breeze, that has to be a good thing. It's not. If the air you're letting in is even a fraction warmer than inside the house, all you're doing is literally trapping heat inside your house. So on a very hot day, windows closed, curtains drawn, it's an absolute must. If you have more than one side that your house faces or your flat faces, then there will be a much cooler side and a warmer side. Definitely everything closed on the warm side. And if you need to get a breeze going, then find the lowest window that is on the cooler side of the building. But do not open the windows until late in the evening. I'm talking 11 o'clock or midnight, when the air outside is genuinely cooler than the air that's in the house. It's really a rookie mistake, and I can't say enough how many times I have had to have this exact conversation with my other half. It took 4 years for him to get it, but he's finally got it, I think.
Okay. Well, I would agree with all of that, but with a couple of kind of tweaks. So my trick number one, you have to get a digital thermometer for inside your house, or you can have a couple, on different floors and different sizes of the building, etc. And you have to monitor those. So the one outside my bedroom is saying 27.5. You then go and check your weather app to see whether it is warmer or cooler outside. Only once it is cooler outside. So you won't have to wait till midnight if it's going to drop down to 22 by 7 p.m. Fine, at 7 p.m. you can then open the curtains, fling open the windows, and you will be cooling your premises down. And then as soon as that changes in the morning, as Alex said, closing the windows, closing the curtains, and none of that changes until your thermometer tells you.
I would say do it by sense. Don't do it by a weather app. Because, for instance, on one side of the house, I have a road. Now that tarmac, that tar,
Is
it
radiating
traps
heat back
heat,
up,
it
yeah.
radiates heat back
Yeah.
out. So even if the app is saying 22, you may actually be getting sweltering hot breeze coming in. So really just trust your senses. Open that window a bit and see, is what is coming in genuinely cooler than what is
Yeah.
inside already?
On dog heat management, which is something obviously I have to
Oh,
take very,
doggos,
very
they suffer
seriously.
so, don't they?
They do, because they can't sweat like we do, they pant. So being extremely aware of the signs of overheating. Why do I say that? Because by the time, if your dog is suffering from heat stroke, you get it to a vet, the damage will have been done and is almost entirely irreparable. The damage to their internal organs. So you're looking out for excessive panting. You're looking out for any kind of frothing around the mouth and them acting like they're drunk, walking in a kind of haphazardly way or looking like they're a bit dizzy. If you see those signs, you've got to act very, very, very quickly by cooling your dog down. And that means getting them wet and putting them in front of a fan so that you can emulate what sweating does for the human body and evaporate that heat away from them. What do I do to avoid him getting to that stage? I've got something that is like a little wetsuit. I think other companies do them, but Equa Fleece do them. And it's a very, very thin kind of t-shirt that you put over the head and you put the front legs through the holes at the front and then pull it down over their torso and you keep it wet. So you just keep pouring jugs of cold water over the t-shirt and that will stop the excessive panting very, very quickly. If you have to exercise them, obviously always try and do it on grass because their paws do get burnt on pavement and tarmac. And when their paws are very, very hot, it's extremely hard for the dog to cool themselves down. So early morning walks, late evening walks, and with the Equa Fleece that is very, very wet. So that would be my tips for dog owners.
Can I add that for cat owners, there are some really good cooling pads. They don't contain any kind of gel or anything like that. They're just thin plastic pads made from a material that's basically quite heat resistant. And they like sitting on them if you're in a flat that's carpeted side to side.
Cats bloody love the heat.
Well, they love the heat. I mean, they also can't sweat, but they are better at regulating themselves because basically they're going to a sort of cat coma and do absolutely nothing, while dogs still stay quite active. Their metabolism is still up.
And overheat.
Exactly. Idiots. Dogs are idiots, basically. Cats are smart.
Don't listen, Wrigley.
But they still need a little bit of help. One more thing. You mentioned sleeping on top of the duvet. Get rid of the duvet, for God's sake. Why do people still have their duvets out? There is something about us that means we find it difficult to sleep when we're not covered with something. Did you know that? We feel sort of exposed. It must be quite an ancient instinct in us that feels exposed if we have nothing on top of us. There are some really, really good and very, very cheap cooling blankets, they're called. They're either made of cotton or they're made of bamboo. And they're very slick and they basically absorb your sweat and cool your skin down, but they still give you the illusion of weight, of having weight on you. And I find that you tend to sleep well with those on.
Let's do something more fun. What do you eat and what do you drink when you're really hot?
So, food and drink.
Get one.
What's your favorite drink? Let's start with drink.
I love an Aperol Spritz, but I prefer a Pimm's. But I'm very particular about my Pimm's, and it's got to have certain fruits in it. It's got to have cucumber, non-negotiable. I like strawberry, and then I like some either peach or nectarine in it as well. A sugar-free lemonade, because you've got enough sugar from the fruits in it and from the Pimm's itself. Don't have too many, because obviously that will dehydrate you even more. But that... delicious.
That's a date for you.
To actually rehydrate, then I just have tap water with some lemon squeezed into it, and I get my other electrolytes from my food, which we can talk about in a minute.
I quite like a chinotto. That's a sort of Italian bitter orange drink. It tastes quite similar to an Aperol Spritz, actually, but it has no alcohol in it, because alcohol is a diuretic, so you don't particularly want to be drinking a lot of alcohol when it's this hot. And you definitely don't want to be drinking tea or coffee, because they're also extremely diuretic, so they have the opposite effect from cooling you down. They make you get rid of water.
Because you always get told, oh, that's why they drink tea in India. It cools you down.
Yes. Drinking warm drinks is very good because it makes you sweat, so it brings your skin temperature down. But green tea, mint tea, chamomile, things like that, so avoid the caffeine. It's about the hot drink. It's not about the tea, the caffeine in the tea, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And same goes for showers, actually. A lot of people think that a cool shower will help in the heat. Unless you sit in a cool bath or run the shower for 15 minutes, it won't make a hell of a lot of difference to your body temperature. A hot shower, however, will make you sweat as soon as you're out of the shower and bring your skin temperature down by 2 to 3 degrees. So as counterintuitive as that sounds, a warm shower is better when it's hot like this. So on food, again, trust your body. Do not go with what is routine for you. Another argument that I suspect you can guess from the tone of my voice, I have had many times, but, meat stew and a creamy potato dish is not a summer food in any way, shape or form. If you're forcing your digestive system to cope with things like dairy and a lot of salt that both absorb water from your body into the digestive system, you're not doing yourself any favors. Salads, a bit of poached salmon, cold fruit. That's the stuff to be going for when the weather is like this.
Frozen grapes. Yeah. That is a delightful thing.
Yeah,
putting your grapes in the freezer and then eating them. Mm-mm.
In Greece, I can tell you during July and August, the most common lunch of all is probably just watermelon with a bit of cheese and bread.
I'm getting hungry. Oh, delightful. And I love a good salad, and I just think you mustn't scrimp on the dressing.
Yeah.
I can't bear this whole kind of, minimal oil trend. A really good olive oil, particularly Greek olive oil, on tomato, cucumber, red onion, maybe some peppers.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of leaves. Parsley, very finely chopped parsley. And then I do put salt in my dressing because, I think you do have to replenish the salt that you're cutting out.
Yeah, you don't cut out salt altogether. I'm just saying that having really, loads of crisps or whatever is doing your body no favors, basically.
And go to your nearest ethnic grocer and get the Cypriot potatoes, Cyprus potatoes.
So
and
good.
You can leave the skins on, give them a good wash because they're normally quite muddy, and just cut them up into chip shapes. So they're much a longer, thinner potato than the average King Edward that you'd get in a British supermarket. A little bit of oil, and roast those for, 40 minutes max on 200 in a fan oven, or about 25 minutes in an air fryer if you don't want to turn the oven on to keep the temperature down in your home. Those with a salad and some dips of choice, hummus being mine. Oh, that is heaven.
Yeah, that sounds good. I am now getting very hungry too.
It's lovely to be here, though. It's a nice temperature in here, isn't it? We'll get warmer as we go on, obviously, the lights and whatnot. I respond in quite a peculiar way to the heat, I think, mostly sort of here. Down there gets what I call claggy. Anybody else got a good word for that? Anybody else? There was a lady the other day said, what you've got there is LDF. I said, what does LDF stand for? She said, long day funny. I just do a plie. I just do that. You only get a couple of seconds relief because it mostly just slicks back together. I did a show in Edinburgh and a lady at the back of the room shouted out, you need to use some talc. And I thought, surely that just forms a paste.
That's all for another Sunday School. Thank you for letting us squat in your auditory stream. We appreciate every single one of you.
And if you appreciate what we do, please consider supporting us with a monthly stipend, if you can afford it, on ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod. And if your finances will not stretch right now, you can help us by converting others to the Quiet Riot cause.
Keep cool and carry on. We love you more than watermelon. Bye!
Bye!
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simone Canelu. and edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet, Riot.
Additional tip: do not engage in activities that involve wearing headphones. Oh!